In this video, we're going to talk about the PPP loan forgiveness application, the full walkthrough from A to Z. And it's a lot of stuff that you have to be aware of to make sure that you're getting it just right. And it's so important that you plan before you get to the end of the 8 weeks. Don't think that you're just going to go ahead and fill this thing out and get full forgiveness. You really want to watch this video and go through the full application. But before we do, if this is your first time at our channel or you haven't subscribed, click on the subscribe button at the bottom. My name is Travis Sickle, certified financial planner, helping you reach your financial goals. So I'm going to pull up the application here in just a second, but before I do, I cannot stress this enough. You really want to go through this application right away to make sure that you're maximizing your forgiveness, because there are a ton of pitfalls. And each time I read this, I find a new pitfall. So you really want to make sure that you're going through the application, going through some preliminary numbers, just to make sure that you're maximizing your forgiveness, because there are some situations where you'll end up paying paychecks and actually not getting full forgiveness for those same paychecks. So you really want to watch this video, go to the end, go through the application. And if you have questions, leave them in the comments at the bottom. So let's go ahead and pull it up on the screen and go through it together. So you can go ahead and get this application right on the treasury.gov website. I'm going to walk you through where to get it. Just go ahead and click on that red bar at the top and then scroll down. And you're going to see that the loan forgiveness application, just go ahead and click on it and it's going to pull it right up. I'm going to pull up my PDF version just so I can type in and walk you through the whole thing. So this is the application. Go ahead and print out a copy so you can start to look through it and take a ton of notes to make sure you're maximizing your loan forgiveness. Now, I did another video on the PPP loan forgiveness application, so I'm going to leave that link in the description at the bottom. So you're going to want to watch that as well, because I go over the basics just to give you a high-level overview, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail, more of a step-by-step walkthrough for this video. So let's scroll down to where the application actually starts, and that is going to be page 3. And you're going to quickly realize that this is a maze of an application. So we're going to go from one page to the next and back again. So just stick with me, go ahead and print it out and hit the pause button, rewind, whatever you need to do to make sure you get all of the small details. So let's start here right at the top. It's all of your basic information. So you're just going to go ahead and type in your business legal name. If you have a different DBA, doing business as, or trade name, go ahead and enter it in right here. Enter in your business address, also your business EIN. That's the 2 digits, dash, and a whole bunch of numbers after it. And then you're going to enter in your business phone number. Primary contact is your name. So I just go ahead and enter in my name there. And then your email address. Go ahead and put it in there for the application. Now, all this other information you're also going to have on your SBA PPP loan number, your lender PPP loan number, your PPP loan amount. So go ahead and put the full amount. If you forgot what that is, you can just go ahead and check your bank account for that deposit and go ahead and put it in there. For this walkthrough, I'm going to put in $60,000, and then you can put in the date. I'm just going to put in 5/1/2020. And then you're going to put in the employees at the time of loan application. For this walkthrough, I'm going to put 6. Now, I'm not exactly sure which date that is. It's the date that you submitted the application. That's what I would go with at this point. I haven't seen any additional guidance. And if you've seen additional guidance on it, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll put that in future videos as well. And then we're going to look at employees at time of forgiveness application. It's the same thing. So this is going to be after your covered period or your alternate covered period. So whatever that date is, I would just put the amount of employees that you have at the time of forgiveness. And for this walkthrough, I'm going to put in 5. Just to show you what it looks like if we have a reduced amount. And if you did get the idle advance amount, that is the advance amount, not the loan portion, but the advance amount, where it was 1,000 times the amount of employees up to 10,000, you're going to want to put that amount in here. And then also with the idle advanced or the idle application number over here. And then you're going to check off how often you run payroll. So we're going to check off bi-weekly. If you're curious, weekly is 52 times a year, bi-weekly is 26 times a year, and twice a month is 24 times a year. So there's a slight variation there. So just check off what applies to you, and I'm going to put in biweekly for this walkthrough. Now you're going to choose the covered period or the alternate payroll covered period if applicable. So if you want to choose the alternative payroll covered period, you can, or just choose the 8 weeks. What is the 8 weeks? The day that money hits your bank account is day 1, and then just count out 56 days. So for this walkthrough, I'm going to put in 5/1/2020. And we're going to end on 6/25/2020. And if you're actually using biweekly or weekly, you can use the alternative payroll covered period. Otherwise, you have to stick with the covered period if you're doing twice a month or monthly. And the application gives a really clear explanation in using that alternative payroll covered period. And I'll scroll up really quickly just so we can see that right here. So the alternative payroll covered period. And that's the covered period, not the payroll run date. So in their example, if you received the money on Monday, April the 20th, but the first day of the pay period was on April the 26th, then you can use April the 26th and then count out 56 days from that point. So scroll back down to the application and continue. Now, if your PPP loan was in excess of 2 million, check this box. If not, then move forward. And we're going to go to line 1. So this is payroll and non-payroll costs. So now it's going to have you start jumping around. So it's line 1, payroll costs, enter the amount from PPP Schedule A, line 10. And that's going to be on page 6. So we're going to scroll down all the way to page 6. And then you're going to see line 10, payroll cost, add lines 1, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So obviously we have to go through this page before we can even do the beginning of the application. So let's go all the way up to line 1 and fill out the PPP Schedule A. And this is where I say that it is a bit of a maze in filling out this application. So line 1 here says enter the cash compensation in box 1 from PPP Schedule A worksheet table 1. So that is going to be on page 9. So let's scroll down to page 9. So this is going to be where you're going to fill out your employees' information, not your own, for the first section in table 1. And then table 2 is going to be for those employees that earn more than $100,000. So let's go ahead and fill it out. So just put the employee's name. I'm just going to make a whole bunch of them up here. And the employer identification or the employee identifier is the last 4 of their social security number. So I'm just going to put in 1, 2, 3, 4. And their cash compensation is the gross amount that you paid. And they have definitions for the compensation. And this is just going to be from page 7. You can see the cash compensation, which is for each employee, the total amount of cash compensation eligible for forgiveness may not exceed an annual salary of $100,000. And this is going to include the gross salary, the gross wages, the gross tips, the gross compensation, and so on and so forth. You can read that. That's all the cash compensation that's included in this box. So for this walkthrough, I'm going to say that each employee is going to earn $8,000, $1,000 per week over the covered period. So that 8 weeks. And now you have the average full-time employees. And that definition is also on page 7, right below cash compensation. And this calculates the average full-time equivalency. So FTE is full-time equivalency. I keep saying employees. It's full-time equivalency during the covered period or the alternative payroll covered period. So it gets capped at 1. So if you have an employee that's working 70 hours, you're going to just use 1 because it's 40 hours per week. And if it's a salaried employee, it's capped at 40. Even if they're working overtime, it's still going to be 40. And this is one of the reasons why you want to kind of stop and go through this a few times, because the average full-time equivalency on the last sentence of the first paragraph, you could see that it says a simplified method assigns 1.0 for employees who work 40 hours or more per week, and 0.5 for employees who work fewer hours, may be used at the election of the borrower. So what they're really saying is if this formula works in your favor, use it. Otherwise, just do the math that's above it. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill out I'm going to put a 1 in there because it's a full-time, wasn't reduced. And then the salary hourly wage reduction. And there's a whole section just for the salary hourly wage reduction. And that's going to also be on page 7, right below the average full-time equivalency. So if there was no reduction in the salary hourly wage reduction, then just put a 0. So I just went ahead and zipped through that and put all of the names of the employees that were working during this covered period minus the owner. So we did have, in this walkthrough, we do have one employee who did not return to work over that covered period. So then we're going to go ahead and add these up, and that is going to be 32,000. And then we're going to add those up. That's going to be 4, and go to box 3, which is going to be 0 for this walkthrough. Now, also for this walkthrough, we didn't have anyone that was over $100,000, but if that was the case, it's the same information. You're just going to do it based on a $100,000 cap. And the cap, if you're doing the math for $100,000, then it's going to be $15,385 is the max cash compensation. So now we can go back up to line 1 and we can enter in our 32,000. That was the total amount of payroll in box 1. And then we're going to enter in the average full-time equivalency for box 2 from the PPP Schedule A worksheet, table 1. And we're going to put in 4 right there. And it was actually unclear if it actually wants the 4 or if it just wants the average, because it does say total in the boxes, but here it does say enter the average full-time equivalency for box 2. So I'm just going to put in 4. It doesn't look like it matters, but if it does, we can come back to it. And then for line 3, we're going to enter the salary hourly wage reduction. That was box 3. We didn't have any wage reductions, so we're just going to go ahead and put 0. Now let's take a minute and go to the safe harbors and the wage reduction exemptions really quickly, because those are very important. And that's going to be on page 8. So right here, it says, if you have during the covered period or the alternative covered period, the employee was fired for cause, voluntarily resigned, or voluntarily requested and received a reduction of their hours. You're going to want to document that. But if that's the case, then that's why we get to put a 0 in box 3. And then there's the full-time equivalency reduction safe harbor. So what they're comparing is the timeframes from February 15th, 2020 and ending on April 26th, 2020. So if you've had a reduction in the full-time equivalency of the employee levels during that time frame, you laid somebody off right before April 26th, as long as you bring them back by June 30th, then you're not going to get penalized for the amount that you're paying out in payroll. And that's really important for planning, because you could actually pay out payroll from the funds from the PPP loan and not get forgiven, because if you didn't bring them back and they weren't for one of these exemptions above that we just talked about, getting fired or voluntarily resigning or asking for reduced hours, and you're documenting it, then you could actually end up paying payroll that you'll have to pay back from the loan, from the PPP loan. Okay, let's go back up to page 6 again and continue. So on line 4, we're going to enter the cash compensation on box 4 from PPP Schedule A worksheet table 2. So this is for the highly compensated employees, but we didn't have any in our example, so I'm just going to put 0. And that math works just like it did in table 1. Same thing for the table 2. Still for the highly compensated employees, or the employees that are making $100,000 or more. And then line 5, it's going to be the same thing from table 2. So we're going to go ahead and put a 0 there as well. And then for health insurance and retirement plans, lines 6 and lines 7. For this walkthrough, I don't have any for this walkthrough, so I'm just going to go ahead and put 0s. But if you do have group health coverage, then you can put it in for line 6. The payments, and then line 7 is for the employer contributions. So I'm going to point that out. Employer, not employee contributions. These aren't those deferrals. This is the employer contribution. So it's matching contributions or profit sharing contributions to a retirement plan. And these go above and beyond if you have employees that are applicable in table 2 over $100,000. This is above that amount. And this one's an important one, because the retirement plans is something, a profit sharing contribution on the employer side is something that you can make last minute in that 8-week time frame, that 56 days. If you didn't get back to business right away, but you're meeting these exemptions, then you might actually be able to get full forgiveness by closing that gap and adding to a retirement plan for your employees. Again, it depends on your particular situation. There's a lot of factors when you're going through this application, but I just want to point that out. That might be something if you're trying to get just a little bit more forgiveness at the last minute and you're getting all your employees back to work, that could be how you can close the gap. Then on line 8, this is going to be for taxes for state and local taxes assessed on the employee's compensation. I'm going to put 0 for that. If you have that, put it in there. And then on line 9, this is going to be for you as the business owner. So I had everyone earning the same amount in this example. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the 8,000. And then you're going to add all those numbers up. So I'll scroll back up so you can see it. 32,000 plus the 8,000 is going to be $40,000. And this is where we finally get to line 10, payroll cost, adding lines 1, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So this is where I was pointing out before, if you have full-time equivalency reduction calculations, it's going to reduce the amount of loan forgiveness. But if you meet the safe harbor provision, then you're just going to go ahead and enter 1 and not have any reduction in the amount that you're paying out. So I'm just going to go ahead and put 1.0 right there. So now we can go back up to page 3 and complete the application. So now for line 1, we can enter in the PPP Schedule A line 10, which was $40,000. And here's where you're going to enter in your 3 non-payroll costs. So it's the business mortgage interest payments, just the interest, the business rent or lease payments, and the business utility payments. And as it stands right now on page 2, we could see the eligible non-payroll costs. So if you want to dig in a little deeper on what those actually cover, you could see those eligible non-payroll costs. Now, there's probably going to be more guidance just to add more clarification for more questions on what it covers. But this is a pretty good explanation as it stands right now, but there might be more guidance. So just want to stay tuned for that. But this is a starting point while you're doing the planning on what is and is not covered. So scroll right back down and we can look, and we're just going to enter in for these numbers, obviously enter in whatever you have, whatever your projections are, so you can get an idea of where you're going to end up. But for the business mortgage, I'm going to say we have 0 and our rent is $6,000 a month. So we'll put in 12,000, and then business utilities, 5,000. And I'm just making this up for this example. And then on line 5 is the total salary hourly wage reduction. So that is from PPP Schedule A line 3. And we're going to enter in 0. So now we're going to add lines 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's going to be 57,000. And then our full-time equivalency reduction quotient, which is going to be from PPP Schedule A line 13, we're going to enter in 1. And that means it's not going to be reduced at all. Now for this section, for line 8, modified total, multiply 6 by line 7. So if this was less than 1, obviously this number would be a little bit smaller, but 57,000 times 1 is 57,000. And then the PPP loan amount. So we said we got $60,000. And now we have to divide our payroll by 0.75. which comes out to 53,333. So the forgiveness amount, enter the smallest of lines 8, 9, and 10. So the smallest number is 53,333. So you can see from going through this calculation that even though we followed all the rules, even got the safe harbor exemptions, we were still not given full loan forgiveness. It was reduced, even though we paid out 57,000 of the 60,000. So it's not like it's just the 3,000 that was sitting in the bank that we have to give back. We actually have to give back more than that because we couldn't, for whatever reason, get payroll back to 100%. So even with these safe harbors, you still might owe more money. So it's really important that you're looking at your payroll and doing whatever is best for your business. Because think of another scenario on this. If your employee quits halfway through the 8-week covered period, you'd kind of be in the same boat. So you might be paying all of this money out and then realize that they're no longer there. So you can't fill that spot. You couldn't pay out that amount of payroll. So you're going to have to pay some of it back. So So you really want to run through these numbers to make sure that you're maximizing your loan forgiveness and you just don't have a surprise that you really didn't want to deal with. And if you've watched some of my other videos, you might have a strategy that you just want to keep the money in the bank, and at 1%, you're thinking that's not that big of a deal, but you just don't want the surprise of having to pay back a loan that you thought was going to be forgiven. So you just want to run these numbers in advance, plan accordingly, and do the best you can as a small business. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. And if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and leave your comments down at the bottom.